Hey everybody, it's Romania Black, and I kind of couldn't wait. So, it's not quite been a week since Death Note episode 4 came out, and I should wait a couple more days to get some comments for the next episode, but I couldn't wait. I just couldn't. Not after that last episode, no, not after we found out old Raye Pinber and found out that his name, that he's with the FBI, and now Light knows, and I'm nervous because I kind of like Raye's character. He seems like a nice guy, and it's like, you're gonna die. But yeah, oh buddy. Yep. So I did have a couple comments though that I want to do before we start this, but I am recording this a little bit early. I got off work today and I was like, I really want to watch the Death Note episode 4 dub. I was like, I really want to watch the episode. So I went and watched it. It was great. And then as soon as I got done, I was like, I had another show planned that I was going to watch tonight, and I was like, or I could watch Death Note. So that kind of tells you just how much I'm getting sucked into this show. The dub is great for this. The first 4 episodes of dub have been really good. And I will say that the voice actor Brad, who voices Light, he can make him so cocky sometimes. I'm like, oh my gosh, man, you sound so arrogant, especially on the whole date thing. It was great. Poor Yuri. I feel sorry for her. And then old Raye. I'm seeing death flags for Raye, but I don't know exactly how. Light's gonna weave it in some way to do some kind of arrogant thing to get L's go. But I'm like, Light, if you are not careful, you are going to get found out, and you're gonna drag your family into this. I just, because we said the last episode, if he just lets Raye go, Light doesn't know this, but if he had just let Raye go, this was Raye's last day on the job. He's not gonna follow Light anymore. And if he just let him go, then none of the rest of the series will probably happen if he just lets him go. But I don't think he will. I think he'll try to find a way to kill him that's going to send like a message to L, and it's going to cause a bunch of stuff to go down. So who knows? Maybe he will let him go. I don't know. I do have 2 really quick comments though from Patreon. One is from Be Happy. And Be Happy made a note. I thought this was really cool that we now have these 2 personas. We have L, we don't know L's real name. We just know they're called L. And we have Kira, who is Light's persona as the god, right? That's Kira. And Be Happy pointed out that Light is now kind of the facade, and that Kira is actually who Light actually is. And that's a really cool tie-in to back in episode 2 when we were talking about the social media angle of it, and how people in public put on a persona, and then behind closed doors in anonymity, they're able to be themselves. And L kind of performs that. L is, as far as we know, themselves behind the screen when we can't see them. But Light, the persona of Light himself, is the perfect schoolboy, the doting son, the perfect child. But we've seen the last couple episodes that Kira is kind of more who he really is inside, like his ideals, what he's fighting for, how he views people, how he views himself. Kira is more, even though it's a fake name, it's really a persona that speaks more true to who Light really is than Light himself. So I think that's really cool. Be happy that you pointed that out. So that bears the question, who really is L? Is the L that we see really him, or what is his actual personality? So many questions. And then the truck pointed out that in the manga, there's an additional scene, and I probably won't react to the manga. I'll probably read it off screen when I'm done with the series. But they noted that in the manga, there is a scene where Light is kind of like towards episodes 1 and 2, sort of spacing out and daydreaming, thinking about the Death Note. And the teacher like calls him and is like, hey, pay attention. We're like in the middle of class, Light. And the teacher makes a note and says, you're the top of the class. You need to be first. And it's like, oh. And so that adds like another layer to it of people's expectations of Light, that since he's always been at the top, people expect him just to automatically stay up there. So I'm sure that feeds into his ego, it feeds into his arrogance, it feeds into his personality, and his, his stance saying he's the only one that can do this. Back in episode 2, he's like, I'm the only one that can do this. Well, this teacher and his family and the people around him have all fostered this behavior and kind of nurtured that mindset in him. And so it's very, very curious and unique to think about, but I liked it a lot. So thank you, the truck. Thank you, Be Happy. Those are my only 2 comments I had that were left over from the episodes from last week. And I'm recording this a few days before episodes 3 and 4 air on YouTube and Patreon. So just a little bit of ahead, but I'll probably take a little break after this episode. Maybe. We'll We'll see, right? I'm getting sucked into this show, and I'm feeling it's only going to get worse. So we're not going to wait anymore. We are going to watch episode 5 of Death Note and just see what happens, right? And we're going to start that here in 3, 2, 1. And let's say a prayer, y'all, for our boy Raye. Oh, R.I.P. Raye. Oh, man, this episode, oof. There's Light, my dude. Light, my dude. Oh, man. We talk about, this episode was a lot about choices and consequences of those actions. And just, this was a weird episode for me because it wasn't like, there was twists and turns, but it wasn't like the shock in your face. Like, this seems like this was a setup episode. It felt like a setup episode for what's coming next of L revealing himself. But R.I.P. Raye. I did not see him already die. I figured he would die maybe like in the next episode. I was like, he'll make it out this episode. He didn't even get a chance to tell L. But may not even be I want to pause this. I want to go back to the OP and pause it. I noticed something watching the English dub, and I was like, I wanted to pause and see what that was. But it was Light has a handcuff with a chain on his left hand or right hand, the one reaching towards Ryuk. Interesting. Oh my gosh. And the red and blue dynamic. Okay. Man, poor Raye. I feel bad for Raye in this. There's some implications with what just happened, right? So there's some implications. Okay. With this episode, Light, honey, like, at the point about the coffee owner in the shop, I was like, okay, well, at first I was like, you're gonna just kill a random coffee shop owner, but he intentionally did his research and was like, oh, this guy was accused of sexual assault and they just didn't have enough to pin it on him, so he deserved to die. Again, enough to accuse, just not enough to do anything. Okay, in the OP, the woman there, she is holding Raye, so that is his fiance. Not his girlfriend, his fiance. So we're going to talk about this in Light. Interesting. Yeah. I'm so curious about all of this. And we still haven't met this one girl who sees Light. This episode was really surprising in just what Light did, and L and Light's decisions were very interesting in this episode, and so it's gonna be curious to go walk through this a second time. Tactics. Yeah, so the cat and mouse game, December 20th. So it's near Christmas. So this is near Christmas time, December 20th. Okay, in Japan. All right, we're near Christmas, near the new year. Okay. So yeah, this episode, because I'm kind of flabbergasted by it, by some of the choices that Light makes and then L makes. The first couple episodes in here, I was like, man, this cat and mouse game is really picking up the pace and we're getting through things really quickly, right? Because these two characters are so intelligent. And I was like, well, how are we going to change things up? Well, the decisions that these characters are making, I get super nervous about L showing his face. I get really nervous about L showing his face around Chief Yagami. That whole conversation with Chief Yagami and Light, we're going to talk about it for sure. But I get really nervous for L. I'm like, I don't know how to feel about this, but I like the little details of this episode, walking back through it, where you see the guy got hit by the car and you see the man owning the car is like sitting there like doing this with his head like, oh my God. Because yeah, and you just see how badly the car is like dented up. Like this guy's probably freaking out that he killed a man. So that is the thing. Light, again, we've talked about this since episode 1. Light in doing these murders does not take into account, or has not taken into account, or seems to care about the fact that these people he is killing, their deaths are impacting other people. So Raye's obviously impacts his fiance a great deal, right? Because that's the woman that he loved and that loved him. That, you know, she's deeply impacted by this. But like even this guy that owns the car, that guy there has to deal with the rest of his life with the trauma of having hit a man head on and killed him. Even if that man was a criminal and had shot others and was a murderer, that still doesn't change the fact that the guy driving the car has to now deal with that for the rest of his life and be traumatized by that. And will probably have like nightmares about hitting this man and be paranoid and like have all this internal mental instability thanks to Light just writing in the book like, accidental death, we'll see what happens. And that kind of ties back to the guy that hit the boy on the bike. The truck driver that hit the guy on the bike. Like, these people are going to be impacted by these deaths. And Light doesn't seem to take that into account or care. He's just like, oh, it's fine. My idealistic world will be perfect. Just get rid of the bad guys. But again, there's all those layers to it. And that kind of ties to how Elle talks about being like a childish mentality. Yeah, you can think that you are going to be this idealistic God and kill all the bad people, but there's so many other factors tied to that you can't just say, okay, this one person's dead, now the world's a better place. It's like that there's ramifications, and Light just doesn't seem to care about them. He's just focused on his ideal, and he's just caught up in that and the game with Elle that he's not considering the impact of what's happening around him. Because there's some things he does in this episode that I'm like, if that didn't go exactly perfect, that could have had a huge implication. That could have been awful. So we are going to talk about the Death Note and some of the rules with it, right? But yeah, the older couple and then Raye. And then this Light gets off the bus and he's like, hi, everything's fine. Like, he has that animation where he just kind of smiles for a second. I'm like, dude, this guy just died. And that's when the Raye guy's like, I'm here in Japan on a secret investigation. If the Japanese police were to find out. And there's so many things like it was on the tip of his tongue. He almost figured out it was Light. I was like, I was just waiting for it. I understand. I won't tell anyone that I met you, including my father. So that's the thing too. So in this moment, they acknowledge each other which Raye says something curious because Light at this point, as far as Raye knew, Light didn't know that he was tailing him, right? He's like, oh, I'm on an investigation if the Japanese police were to find out. And he's like, oh, it's okay. Nobody will find out, including my father. And I'm like, Light's just cocky enough that he's like, oh yeah, my dad's not going to find out either. Wink, wink. Like, if I were Raye in that moment, I'd been like, why would I care if your dad knew? I didn't know you're connected to the police. What? Like if I were in Raye's shoes, that would have been a red flag. That would have been like wait, why did you tell me about your dad? Because he didn't probably want Light to know that he was on his trail. Or maybe he did. When I watch the English dub, maybe that'll become clearer. But it seemed to me like, why would you mention your dad in this? Seems like a red flag. And then he heads off. And Light just left Yuri. Yuri just peaced out. Maybe she went home to her parents. Maybe her parents came and picked her up. Maybe he just was like, bye. We don't know what happened to Yuri. I was like, where'd she go? She's nowhere to be seen. That date went south real quick. Again, but Light didn't care. She was just part of the act, right? Again, he uses people in ways that I'm like, she now is traumatized, right? She has to live with that now. So it's just, I'm like, Light just, it goes over his head. He does not see it, right? And so he's like, now I've come in contact with an FBI agent. He's like, he doesn't want the police or Elle to know that. If my father found out, he would tell Elle. Raye doesn't suspect me at all. Yeah, I wish that Raye would have told him. I wish Raye would have, I think if Raye had dug just a little bit deeper and been a little bit more suspicious, I think if he had done that, he would, and he just told Elle what he knew from that day. Because he had a week. There was a week that went by. He had a week he could have told Elle. I'm like, Raye, I wish he just told him. But we can't have nice things. Not in this show. No. But yeah, that was Raye's weakness. He says the police will deal with just happened now as a regular accident. That makes me so frustrated that Raye said nothing. I really hoped that Raye, like as the doors were shutting on the train, I hoped that Raye had took out his phone and had taken a picture of Light with the envelope. That's what I wanted to see, was like him pull a phone out at the last minute and like sneak a picture and Light not know about it. And then when they found his body and confiscated the phone, they would see the photo they took and be like, well, why was his last picture of this kid? And figure out who it is. Like, that's what I was hoping he would do. But, did not do it. So yeah, we go back to this apartment where this woman is reading. This woman, she's from the OP. She's the one holding Raye. It all makes sense now. Yep. And she says, welcome back. And she's from Japan. Okay. So that explains why he knows Japanese. Because, like, well, he's from the FBI. I guess if he was stationed in Japan, he would need to know it. But he also knows it because his fiance is Japanese. Okay. And him saying, yeah, and she's like, what's the matter? Why the big sigh? And so he tells her, so she's former FBI. Okay. Interesting. This conversation's rather interesting with her, where he tells her about the guy robbing the bank 2 days ago, trying to be on the thing to hijack. Japan's become a scary place. And she's like, oh, does that mean you were also on the bus? Like, she's instantly suspicious. This girl knows what's up. She's like, funny that. Like, she's putting together what we all thought. And Light has no clue about her. And it makes sense because Raye would make sure that he doesn't want her to dabble in FBI stuff because he wants to keep her out of it. And so it would make sense Light wouldn't know about her because they probably like purged her files and stuff so that Light wouldn't know. The suspect jumped out of the bus and was hit by a car. Did the suspect die? And so she connects it right back. She connects it back to Kira. And she's like, do you really think it was an accident? Like, that seems too coincidental, don't you think? You were on that bus because you were investigating someone. Could it be tied to the person you were investigating? And it's like, yes, she has figured out the mystery. Yeah. And the one issue that I do have with Raye's character, because I do feel for Raye, I don't think he should have died. He didn't do anything deserving of death. He just died because Light didn't want him involved in the case and suspecting him anymore. That's the only reason he died, was because he was close to figuring out who Kira was. And I don't like that. But the one thing about Raye's character that I'm like, and I know why he says it. He says you were once a brilliant FBI agent, right? But now you're my fiance. And so he does say you're no longer an agent. What does he say? Don't say anything about the Kira case. Don't get involved or take risks. That's what we agreed on. Okay, so I could see how somebody would take this conversation. Like, he's like, once we start a family, you're going to be too busy to worry about all that. And I'm like, what? So yeah, because like when I brought you with me here, it was to meet your parents. So they just got engaged. So he's not met her parents yet. Okay. Well, that's sad. He's not going to meet them now. Or maybe he did meet him and then it was short-lived. And she says it was a force of habit. And he's like, I'm sorry. Don't worry about it. He says, once we have a family, you'll be so busy that you'll forget you were an agent. That's the one line that I'm like, I kind of have her face. Like, she looks at him like, gee, thanks. And that's just if you're a woman, and some guys like, once you have kids, you'll be doing all the work and you'll be too busy to worry about that former FBI job. And I'm like, you're taking care of this kid too, that's the one line that irks me a little bit with his character, that I was like, ugh. But to be fair, he does say that we agreed. He didn't say that's what I wanted you to do. He said we agreed that when we got engaged that you would stop being FBI. And I get why he wants her to do that. He was doing that to keep her safe because he loves her. I get that. That's a really admirable thing. It's just her face. Like, he's trying to lighten the mood, but it's kind of like, that's not the way to do it. Like, you're saying, oh, wow, I'm going to be stuck raising your child. Cool. And you get to go off and do detective cases. Glad we've got those gender roles established. But yeah, that's my only beef with his character. I was like, that line kind of is a little bit dated. Even for 2009. I was like, ugh. And that's just me as a female viewer. But you won't have time for that habit to come out. Well, don't worry. She won't have time for that habit. She does have time now because you're dead. So funny how that works out. Instead, help me think of something that will make that father of yours like me more. Well, oh, Raye. I do feel bad that Raye dies. I really do, because he did not deserve to die at all. No, I do feel bad about that. And so then Ryuk asks if he's going to write the name of the agent down at that moment. And I'm glad that Light, amidst all of his arrogance, is not cocky enough to be like, yeah, I'll write his name down now. No, he's smart. He knows to wait. And wait a week. a week still seems a little too soon to me. He says if he dies right after I meet him, I'll look suspicious. A week, that's only 7 days. That's still seems a little fresh. I would have waited like 3 weeks, like let it go. But I guess he's worried. But Light doesn't know if Raye is going to keep following him or not. So he's assuming that Raye's going to keep following him. So he's going to write the name down for a week from now just to be on the safe side. So I get it. I don't think a week's enough, but given what Light does not know about Raye's inner monologue, it makes sense why he chooses to do that. Once they've investigated more people involved with the police. For now, I'll use some more inmates to toy with Elle. That's the other thing, is that, yeah, these are inmates, so they are criminals. They've done bad things, but they're just toys to Light. Light's just dangling them in front of Elle and throwing them at him, being like, here's some more red herrings, see what you do with those. Like, it's still the fact that he's just killing people. When he says to toy with him, I'm like, you're just throwing away people's lives just to play a game with this guy that you want to get a rise out of. And what Light does is the whole God of Death thing. It's so arrogant. It's such ego where he says, Elle, do you know? And he says, gods of death. I'm like, you're just dangling information in front of him. Just being like, here you go. And he frames the joke at the end, though, about likes apples. I was like, I felt like that part was Light getting back at Elle from episode 2. He's like, okay, Elle, you made a fool of me in episode 2. Fair enough. Now, touche. I'm going to play you. And then but he's not lying. He says, did you know gods of death like apples? Like, that part's true. But of course, he assumes that Elle is going to take it as he's just shitting with him. It's like, but he's not. So that part, he totally got back at him for that. Okay. There may be someone else who will leave a message. So yeah. Okay. Yeah, he's just playing with Elle. I kind of feel bad for Elle, honestly. I do, because Elle's just trying to crack this case and find this mass murderer, and Light's just toying with him. So we skip Christmas. It's December 27th. So it's been a week. It's been a week. Damn it. Yep. And he waits at the mall. So at the train station, right? Okay. Are you going to do it here? Yeah, so they are at the station, right? That's what they're near. And there's all the shops and stuff. For the record, like I said in the reaction, Light cannot pull off a beanie. It looks so odd on him. He's got too much hair. But there's not many that can pull off beanies, so it's fine. And then Light's like, I'm just going to show you what I've learned from all the experiments and research I've done in the past few days. He's like, experiments? Yes. I've been testing different killing methods on the criminals in this area. Oh my gosh. And so accidental death, December 26th, 8:30 p.m., dies after getting hit by a car. First, I write the cause of death and the circumstance in the death note. Then, when I write the name and afterwards, it becomes true. Okay, so this was setting up what he was about to do with Raye. And I like that Ryuk's like, that's something I didn't know. Like, Ryuk's like, oh, yeah, we always knew that. Yeah, even Ryuk didn't know some of this. Like, oh, that's clever. Didn't realize you could do that. Like that part's really interesting. But it was all just to prove, to see if he wrote the cause of death. He had the paper, and it was like when you have a confidential like evaluation, it has the one blocks out and you don't see the rest of it. So yeah, so the rest of it was blocked out, what he'd wrote in the margins. And just that whole thing with Raye was sinister. It was sinister. It was sinister for a few reasons, and we're going to talk about that when we get to it. And he's like, oh, here we go. He's here. Right on time. It's like mapping out a schedule or whatnot. Oh, but here's the thing. He had 6 minutes to write down Raye's death, and it was a week from now. So he wrote down that Raye was going to come to the station, run into him, write the names in the notebook, and then after exiting the train was going to die. So that's how he knew he was going to show up. And that's when he says his name. And this is a bold, this whole plan that Light had from the start was very, very risky. and is relying on a lot of variables. If one thing had gone wrong, then this whole thing would have been mucked up. Like, first of all, the biggest shocker to me, and Raye is trying to remember his name. He's trying to remember his voice. And he gets it at the end, but he's trying to remember his voice. I kept wanting him just to figure it out, be like, oh, don't you know? But it's like barely there. And he gets it at the very end, right before he dies. But there's that. The fact that he doesn't use a voice modifier. He totally just shows up and in that voice, suspecting that Raye won't know who he is. That was risk number one. The second thing is the faith that he's not going to turn around and try to do anything. And it's that fear saying, I'm Kira and I could kill you. He's like, if you turn around and put your hand in your pocket, then I'll kill you. Mm-hmm. And he's like, I've heard that voice somewhere. It's like, oh, damn it. And he's like, I'll prove to you I'm Kira. And so he's like, I'll kill the man with the glasses. And I like that Raye's like, no, don't do it. Don't do it. He's like, don't do it. Like, Raye just doesn't want him to kill anybody. Even after he knows that he's a criminal, he's like, no, don't kill anybody else. And it's not just that. So Light says that he had no choice. He says, I had no choice. I thought that if I didn't kill at least one person, you wouldn't believe that it was me. So yeah, okay, fair. And he tries to frame it as, you know, I'm still doing a good thing because that man has been repeatedly accused of sexual assault, but the police never convicted him due to lack of evidence. Mm-hmm. He was a menace and deserved to be punished. And so he's like, I cannot kill someone unless I know his face. And he's like, I could kill everyone you see here. That's the part too. I'm like, well, not everyone in that entire train station area is a criminal. So at that point, Elle's like, I could kill anybody, including your girlfriend and your family. And I'm like, Elle, Light, Kira. You know, it's just that threat that it goes against, you know, creating this idealistic world. And it's basically the part that frustrates me with Light is that, yeah, it's great that he wants to create this idealistic world, but it's an idealistic world with him in charge and he gets to make all the shots. And if you disobey him or anger him, he'll kill you whether you've done anything else wrong or not. Like he said in episode 3, he was like, or episode 2, he's like, angering me is evil. It's like, ah! But yeah, I could kill everyone you see here. And so, yeah, he's like, if you have any requests, I'll do it. And he says, don't. Raye's like, don't. I believe you. He's like, of course you care more about your loved ones more than the people here, don't you? And Raye slips up again. He says, he's like, Light says, consider them hostages. And he says, you know about her. I'm like, Raye, you dumb goofed. You're supposed to be... your fiance is a better FBI agent than you are. That's kind of the problem. That's the problem I have with Raye in this episode. I have nothing against Raye as a character other than the fact that he's not as good of an FBI agent as his fiance. He should have been the one to take the vow not to be an FBI agent. I'm like, you can't remember the kid's name that you've been trailing for how many days? You can't remember his name. You don't tell Elle everything immediately afterwards. You tell your fiance, but you don't relay that information to Elle that could possibly be important. You slip up and say, oh, you know about her? That's just enough info to give Light to where he has a lead with it. I'm like, and because he smiles, he's like, yeah. He's like, that's right. I've been studying you. I'll kill everyone. So he assumes the girlfriend, because he doesn't say fiance, he says girlfriend. And I'm like, if he had done all this research on Raye, he probably would have known they were engaged and not just boyfriend and girlfriend. But he assumes he doesn't see a ring on the finger, so because, you know, guys don't usually wear engagement rings, so he doesn't see a ring on the finger, so he assumes that they're not married. He thinks they're boyfriend, girlfriend, but he doesn't say fiance, so... So yeah, I'm just like, Raye, why did you do that? What do you want me to do? And so, yeah, he has the computer with him to go look up stuff. And is there a file in the agents? And so he's like, I have my work computer with me, but I can't get on to the hard drive to find all that information. So he's like, I want you to get to a place where someone can send you that information that has the hard drive. You can take out the transceiver and put it on the earphone. Transceiver. It's almost like a toy. Okay. But this won't leave a transmission record anywhere. Okay. So yeah, he's avoiding being recorded and talking to him from a distance. All right. And just following him. I mean, Light planned this out. This was genius. This whole plan is genius. But there's so many tiny little things that could have gone wrong. And once we get on the train with the Death Note, we're going to talk about that because there's some implications that just happened that I'm like, sit in the corner, and if it's taken, wait until it's free. So let's talk about this whole thing with the Death Note. So I'm guessing that as long as he didn't touch the actual pages of the Death Note, he couldn't see Ryuk, right? And as long as the actual Death Note book that Light has doesn't transfer to someone else, then Light's memories won't go away. Light will still be the owner of the Death Note until the actual book itself is handed over to someone else. So he can rip out a page from it. He can rip out a page, and that page doesn't matter if it's whoever touches it or whoever does anything with it. It won't affect Light's memory of the Death Note. But yeah, he hands him out the thing where he's stapled together, like, you know, you write in the stuff. It's kind of like you're voting for something. Of those investigators, write the name of the agent who is directly in charge of you all in the top, at the space at the top. Because he had a special death for them, right? He has special death. What is he planning? I'm like, but I have to do as he says. It's like, ugh. I'm like, or what? Or, well, I guess he threatened his girlfriend. And he says, open your laptop and you'll receive a file from your superior soon. And the file of all the names and faces of the FBI agents who came to Japan. Because he had to have, he needed him to see their faces as he wrote down the name. This is the sinister part, right? This is the part that is so sinister. And I get why Light did this, because my thing is, did flash drives exist in 2009? Maybe jump drives didn't exist in 2009, because I'm like, why didn't he take like a flash drive, give it to him, have him put it into the computer and download and save the information and then put it back into an envelope with the transceiver and give it back to him? The thing of it is, I think there could have been a way for Light to have gotten all this information about the FBI agents. There could have been a way for him to get all the, he could have had in their transceiver, he could have had old Raye tell him the names of all the FBI agents, and Light could have probably found a way to hack in and get their faces. But he didn't. Instead, he did the immediate thing, like immediately killed all 12 of them and had them all written down by Raye, right? And the sinister thing about all of this is that Ray's wrote in the Death Note. He's wrote in the Death Note. So Raye cannot go to heaven nor hell at all. He's stuck in this whatever limbo awaits you when you die. He can't go to heaven or hell. He's wrote in the Death Note. I'm like, Light, you've just doomed this man to purgatory. He's never going to see his fiancée again. You just doomed old Raye Pinbar to purgatory. He can't go to heaven or hell because he's wrote in the Death Note. And you've made him like an accomplice in these murders. Like, to make this man murder his own agents. You know what's funny? There's 12 FBI agents. There's 12 disciples of Jesus. And the one that betrays them was Judas. So he just made Raye into Judas. And he just basically, instead of killing Jesus, though, he's killed the disciples. It's just funny there's 12, right? Teams of 4. The 4 teams. It's just funny that there's 12 together and there's 12 disciples in Christianity that followed Jesus. And Judas is the one that betrayed him. So that's just, it's funny. It's not a perfect metaphor, but it's a funny little analogy to tie that number together with everything. But yeah, so Raye basically became a temporary death god for 5 seconds and killed off all of his fellow FBI agents. And then promptly after he walked off the train, he had a heart attack. That part gets me. I'm like, the fact that he involved Raye in using the Death Note, because the guy that got hit by the car, the criminal that got hit by the car in the last episode, he's not going to go to that purgatory. He's going to go to heaven or hell because he didn't write in the death note. He just touched it. He just touched it, and the rule was those who use the death note neither go to heaven or hell. And the guy that touched the piece of paper, he didn't use it, so he's gonna go somewhere. But old Raye just used the death note, didn't know it, and so now he's like exiled to purgatory. It's crazy. And put them on the rack, the transceiver and the files. Put your hands in your lap and continue riding on the train. Make sure nobody has noticed that you have forgotten the envelope and get off the train. Damn. Yep. It was really good. And he's just struggling to remember that voice. He's trying so hard to remember who it was. And at 4:41 p.m. Yep. Damn. And he gets off. Kira, who are you? And that's when he has the heart attack. Damn. God, that ending scene with him looking back at the train and looking back to see Light grab the envelope. Oh, and that look on Light's face when he says, Light, Yagami. Oh, that look. Farewell, Raye Penber. Oh my God. And then he dies. Damn. And Light's just pleased as punch. Raye wrote those names on the pages taken from the death note. Yep. He unwittingly killed all of his colleagues. Yep. David, what does it say? David Lyncher? Oh my God. That's great. Heart attack after sending the files on the FBI agents who came to Japan to investigate Kira. Damn. The rest of the agents all died of heart attacks after the file was received. Light. Oh my gosh. That's just... So we go back to our rules. The human who touches the death note can recognize the image and voice of its original owner, a god of death, even if the human is not the owner of the note. Yep, so you don't have to own it to see them. It's just when you own it that you can go to neither heaven or hell. The person in possession of the death note is possessed by a god of death, its original owner, until they die. So yeah, Ryuk's stuck with him until he's dead. And then God. So they go back to the whole thing. So the FBI director, I mean, it makes sense that the FBI director's like, USA is like, peace out. You just killed 12 of our guys at once. We're gonna decline this. Like, you guys seem like you got it under control. You know, in light of all this, I think that we're going to just kind of back away. We can't risk any more people dying. We're going to call off our investigation in Japan. And so L's like, well, shit. And then Yagami comes in, and he's spoken with the FBI director, and he's found out that L was spying on them. So this is curious too, right? Because now he knows that they were spying on him, that they were investigating everybody. And L... the ones that are left over, the 6 that are left, I guess 5 now. There's 5 left over. The one guy left. And he cryptically, the one guy was like, don't worry, I'm not going to try to investigate and find L's picture. Bullshit. I think he is. I think he is going to try to get L's picture to give to Light or to Kira and upload it. I think he is. Because he wants it all to stop. Yeah, I don't trust that guy at all. I feel like he's going to try to make a move and it's not going to be good. But it makes sense that L needs the police's help. So even if he does suspect Chief Yagami's son, even if he does suspect Light, he can't act on it without full proof. But we'll talk about Chief Yagami because I don't get good vibes. There was some cryptic, ominous stuff in that conversation at dinner. I don't get good vibes at all. No. But yeah, so L's like, I need to narrow things down to people I absolutely can trust. But yeah, he can't deny it at this point. He's like, yes. And then Chief Yagami's like, what's the meaning of this? Are you saying that you suspect us? I'm like, here's the thing about that though. I get why they get upset at him because it is a matter of trust. Light is correct in that it's hard to get people to trust one another. But in a case like this, when information is getting leaked out, of course Elle would research them. Of course course he would. If someone's getting leaked information from the police, you've got to investigate everybody. That's just part of it. So when they get all upset and they're like, we can't trust Elle, I'm like, he's just trying to help you all by figuring out if you all have a mole. You know, if you guys have a mole, they need to figure it out. And the sad thing is they do, but the guy that they're getting the information from has no clue it's happening. And he's like, yeah, I decided it was necessary to learn Kira's identity. He's like, I can't condone this. Chief Yagami is very much has like a binary view of good and evil. It's a very black and white view of what is good, what is right, and what is wrong. He has a very concrete, objective view of what is considered condonable and what is unforgivable. And he considers Kira to be unforgivable. But he's like, any untrustworthy activity in general, like Elle spying on them, he considers that to be, you know, inconceivable, right? And so the thing of it is, I feel bad for Chief Yagami because this story is proving that things are not black and white like that. There's lots of gray, lots of like 50 shades of gray, you know? So it's not so simple. But Mr. Yagami is a very pragmatic character. He's very, you know, just like, this is how it is. And so then, of course, everybody in the office panics. They're like, well, Kira killed those FBI agents, so who's to say that he can't kill us? And it's like, even if they're not criminals, he'll kill anyone who stands in his way. That's where it's like starting to deviate a bit from Light's original ideals, because it's one thing to kill off the evil of the world to make the world a better place, and it's one thing to strike fear into a population by, you know, saying if you commit crimes, you will die. But this is now just killing anybody who defies him, whether they've done crimes or not. That changes things. He's just a murderer. Kira's really just a murderer. Yep. At this point, once Raye died, I was like, nah, Light's whole thing, Kira's just a murderer. It's no longer like, you're not just doing this for the sake of good. You're just getting rid of anybody that could stop you. And so, and I love how quiet Elle is during this. He's just sitting there contemplating like, another victim has left a message. And I love that Light just like, Elle, do you know gods of death? And he's smiling as he says this. He's like, I've got him. I've got his goat. Gods of death. He's like, oh, love apples. And I just love that he's like, damn you, Kira. No. Meanwhile, we cut back to this woman in the dark with the lone tear. Raye's dead. No, he was killed by Kira. So that is the thing. I don't know if it'll end up being a miscalculation on Light's part or not, but him not taking her into account, the fact that his fiance is former FBI and that she suspects Kira. I don't know what that's going to spell for Light or not, but it's interesting, right? I don't know how that's going to go down. But then we have this conversation, a family meeting. The family meeting. So Mr. Yagami finally comes out and says that he is working on the Kira case. And of course, Light's not surprised. He's known that. The sister's like, oh my gosh, no way. You're amazing, Dad. And so he's like, that isn't what I wanted to say. And Light's just like, He's like, yesterday, 12 FBI agents sent to Japan to find Kira died. And the girl's like, oh my gosh. The sister, Sayu, she's like, what? And then, of course, all Light says, oh, does that mean they were killed by Kira? And the dad's like, yeah, it means that Kira might kill anyone who tries to apprehend him. And so then it's a cold and ruthless crime, more fearsome than anything we've encountered before. Many of my officers have quit. And so at that point, the sister is like, you should quit too. And the mom's like, yeah, get away from this case. It's clearly dangerous. But Mr. Yagami, and so I wonder, it says she's right. You should place your life before your job. And that's an interesting commentary in itself, because Light seems to think that this whole thing of using the death note is kind of like his job now. But, well, no, it's kind of becoming his life as well. I guess you could argue it both ways. It almost feels like it's his duty. I guess duty is the better word. Light feels like it is his duty to be the one to enact justice upon the world because no one else can do it and the system is corrupt. And the system is corrupt. I won't argue that. But it's funny that you have Light prioritizing his duty and his job over, you know, just living his life as a normal person. And then you have the mom telling the dad, being like, you should prioritize your life over your job, like almost like a meta commentary. But Chief Yagami says no. And this line, when he says, no, I will not remove myself from this case. I will not yield to evil. That line is almost directly like the line that Lyndell Taylor said back in episode 2. And Light got so mad in that episode that he just wrote Lynn's name right in the book without thinking about it at all. But that same rhetoric is now coming from Light's dad. I will not yield to evil. And he just called his own son evil in the acts that he's doing. And the mom and sister and we don't see Light's eyes. We see the mom and the sister be concerned, but we don't see Light's eyes at first. He says, Dad, that's admirable. I'm proud of you. And then this line, when he says this line, I can't wait to hear it in the English dub. He says, if anything ever happens to you, I'll see that Kira gets executed. So I don't get good vibes from that line. Because on the surface, I don't know. It's hard to read that line. Because I'm like, so it seems like what Light is saying in that moment is if anything ever happens to you, I'll kill myself, right? Or I'll stop being Kira. So maybe that's more the case. Because I can't see Light's whole deal is that he wants to live forever and be the god of this idealistic world he's creating. But he makes the statement that if anything ever happens to his dad, then I'll see that I'll quit being Kira. I'll push the death note away. Like, that'll be the last straw. If anything happens to you, I'll make sure that the death note's no longer used. That I'll just quit being Kira. Now, would he actually do that? I don't know. Would he actually quit being Kira and remove the death note if something happened to his dad? I don't know. I think my theory is that Light's going to kill his dad. Light's going to have to kill his dad in order to keep the death note going. But he seems like he has a really good relationship with his dad, and he seems like he cares about his dad. So I feel like he does not want his dad to die. So that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Like, will Light be in a situation where he has to kill his father? Would he do it? Will he try to find like another way out of it and kill somebody else instead? I don't know. I feel like he has a good relationship with his dad, but we just don't. I don't know. Because last episode I was like, oh, well, Light's going to be responsible for them all dying, but I don't know exactly how to feel, but him looking straight at his dad, it's just a very weird line. And the way that he says it, he's like, if anything happens to you, I'll make sure Kira gets executed. The way that he says that is kind of suspicious because it's like, well, how will you stop Kira? How will you do that? And the dad just looks at him like, that was a weird line, son. That was odd. What's all that about? That was such an odd moment, right? And so it's decided that we all may be killed by Kira. So the dad is like, think of your lives, your family, and your friends. He's like, look, we're about to keep going on with this case, and some people may die and their families may be at stake. So if you want to resign and get off this case, do it. He's like, I want those with the confidence to stay on the case to fight Kira, even if going after him means sacrificing everything. So man, Light's whole resolve probably comes from his dad, because in episode 1, Light was like, someone has to do this, even if it means sacrificing your body and soul. Mr. Yagami is doing the exact same thing here. He's like, no, if I have to sacrifice, we all probably will die if we stay on this case, but it's worth it to stop Kira. So if anybody wants to jump ship, now's the time. And pretty much everybody does except for 5 of them. 5 of them plus Mr. Yagami. So meanwhile, the woman is looking for any clues about Raye. And she's got like this top on, like with Raye there. It's really sad because they look like a really happy couple. And And the bus driver, of course, they were at the back of the bus, so he wouldn't remember all the passengers. He just remembered Raye because Raye yelled them to get down. And she's like, She's an interesting character. We don't even know her name yet, but she's on to Light, and she thinks Kira could have been among those passengers. I can find Kira along the path this bus takes. And then we cut back to the headquarters, and there's only the 5 of them and Mr. Yagami and Watari. Watari's there too. So yeah, there's 8 altogether. Yep, 6 include myself plus Watari and L. And at first he's like, okay, there's only 6 of us. But then he backtracks and is like, no, I should re-say that. There is at least 6 of us. Like, that's more than I expected. And then I trust all of you who have a strong sense of justice. And yeah, they all get really skeptical of L in the shadows with Watari. He's like, we don't trust L. So I wonder, he had them split into 2 groups, right? And so I wonder if he's going to have the second group go and meet Watari and have Watari like take off his hat and stuff and be L, or if he's really meeting them both in 2 separate groups. I don't know. But they don't trust him. They don't think they can work with him. They're like, we need to see who you are. And he's like, L. Mr. Yagami says, if you want to work with us to catch Kira, then we need you to come here. I'm like, do not go to the police station. Nope, that's not going to work. So he says, earlier I said that I trust you all. And that's when he shifts over the computer. I love turning the computer around. Because I was like, okay, how is he going to communicate with them where it can't be tracked? Well, if it's being bugged, you don't want anybody to say anything out loud. So they're all just going to read the screen. And the screen's probably like encoded or something to where, you know, cameras can't catch what's on it. And it says, and they're like, oh. I like the animation of them leaning in to read. It says, please keep what is about to happen a secret between the 8 of us. I would like to meet the 6 of you whom I trust as soon as possible. Before that, I want you all to go outside of the police building and decide once more if you trust me or not. So I like that he sends them outside. He sends them out before they come back. Like, just go out and get some fresh air, figure it out, and then come back and see me. Interesting. And this one guy in the green, he's like, he'll probably send a double to meet us. He's like, the guy in green does not trust them at all. And I like that he's talking to the 5 of them, and Mr. Yagami's like off away from the group, just being like thinking to himself. He's like, a double. I mean, it is possible. And then, but then Matsuda's like, I trust L. He's like, I trust him. He's like, I think we need L's help. I also think we need L's help in this case. And then the other guy says, me too. And then he said, L said from the beginning that he needed the police's help in this case as well. So it's a 2-way street. They both need each other. Perhaps you could think of it like this. L was waiting for this to happen. There were people in the investigation who distrusted L from the beginning. So then we had detectives continuously resign, and confidential information was leaked. You can't run an investigation unless you trust your partners. So L was waiting for the task force to get down to the people he could trust. Yeah, I said back in, I think episode 2 or 3, that once those people started resigning, it's like he's just weeding out the ones that he can't trust, right? That aren't going to be trustworthy. And who will face evil without fear? Yeah, who's not afraid of death? Because that's the thing. Light has been trying to establish fear in all of them. And Mr. Yagami's like, who's going to face him down without worrying about that? Us, right? Okay. But then this guy in the green, he's like, I'd rather resign than join up with L. And then he says, don't worry. He's like, I won't trail you and try to find L. I'm like, I don't believe that for a second. I think this guy's going to be shady. I don't get good vibes. And they're all like, ugh. But then the others say, we'll trust L and try to cooperate with him. All right. I like it. So then L establishes that he's going to be changing hotels every few days. That's smart. Don't stay in the same place. Move around. That'll keep from being noticed. I want to think of the rooms as the de facto HQ of the investigation. If you can agree to those terms, split into 2 groups within a 30-minute interval between you, and try to come here by midnight. Okay, so don't come as like one big group, just come in like pairs. So we see L, And he's barefoot, right? And he's just got like a pair of jeans. He's kind of bow-legged. And he's just kind of hunched over. We're even in how far we've closed the distance between us. He's just, I don't know. There's like a non-human quality about him, and I can't place it. Like, do I think he's a Shinigami? No, because they all can see him. But there's just something weird about him. Like, there's something odd, and he's all kind of hunched over. It's just, there's something like non-human about him, and the clothes he wears are like the most basic. I don't know. He's like, fine. I'll show myself to others as L for the first time. As L for the first time. So he's added other personas, perhaps? I don't know. Interesting. The mystery behind L is very curious, and so I want to know more about him, and I'm guessing we're going to get that in the next couple episodes, but I'm so curious about him. If you manage to find out about this, you'll definitely move in closer. So that is kind of the thing. L is like, all right, I'm at the point where I have to do something and earn their trust, and we have to meet up and talk about this. But he's like, the best case scenario is even if my information about this whole thing gets out back to L, it will just, or to Light, it will just bring Light closer to me. So he's like, I'm going to expose myself in a way, but in doing so, I'm going to potentially be exposing Light and Kira at the same time. So it's like, okay, makes sense. He's like, bring it on. Yeah. And then we cut to Light. Looking at, in the lamp. I did a lot these past few days. Think. Was there something that I missed? And what is my next move? Oh, I love that. I love that Light's always thinking about, he's like, okay, what could I possibly messed up on? What damage control do I need to do? What do I need to do next? I've done a lot these last few days. I feel like he maybe will calm down for a second since his dad had that talk with them all. But I don't know. It's just, oof. Yeah, what's my next move? L, the real battle starts now. We got our task forces assembling. We got this third-party FBI agent behind the scenes trying to figure things out. There's Light and Ryuk. You got L together with Matsuda and Yagami and these other guys. And then, of course, they get to the hotel room and they end the episode right before they open the door. I don't know. The whole thing with Light making Raye write in the death note and cursing him to a life in purgatory rubs me the wrong way a little bit. I don't know. I feel like it's going to be interesting. I feel like the fiance is not going to be the only rogue agent we get in all this. I feel like Light's actions, him versus L, are going to like create all these little splinter cells of different people. They're going to start acting on their own as their own agents, trying to figure out who Kira is or figure out who L is. And so it's interesting that the one guy broke off from the group here and he's like, don't worry, I'm not going to try to figure out who L is. I think he's going to try to figure out who L is. And then you have the girl, the fiance, who is trying to figure out who Kira is. So it's interesting the parallels that we're seeing so far. But holy cow, y'all. So yeah, we're over a fourth of the way into the series. 1/4. Who buddy? Well, no, we're not even a fourth. Yeah, we're not even a fourth. There's 37 episodes. I was in my brain thinking there's like 26. Nope, there's 37 episodes. We're not even a fourth of the way through this. Yeah, now the game really begins. Okay. We're like a sixth of the way through. Oh my gosh. Holy cow. Yeah, we got a long way to go in the series, but it just keeps building. It gets so much better each episode. And now, how dare they leave us on that cliffhanger? Because now I want to know. I want to know what we're going to do and what L's deal is. So, this was definitely a good episode. Definitely a setup episode. It was definitely a setup episode. I liked it a lot. I felt bad for Raye. R.I.P. to him. Cheers to our boy Raye. He tried. He just couldn't piece everything together. But I do feel like the one woman's going to be interesting once we get her name and figure who she is. And now this cat and mouse between L and Light, it's going up a notch. And we'll see, right? So I hope y'all enjoyed this reaction and discussion. I am very curious to know your thoughts down below. We only got to about an hour, so it's fine. This episode definitely was a setup for the next episode. The next episode I'm very, very curious about to see what all Elle says to them in person and what his personality is like. That's going to be interesting, but we shall see, right? So in the meantime, I hope y'all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back next week with episode 6 of Death Note. Bye.